welcome everybody. It's a very rainy Wednesday morning here in Philadelphia too. And it's flooding in Pittsburgh. Thank you, Carrie. And what we want to do, we haven't been on for a few weeks. We've been very busy and we'll talk about that later. But we do think that abortion is the issue that we've got to talk about, and all issues related to female anatomy and the whole maternity process and childcare process. These are things we have to talk about. I read a lot of stuff that takes me down the rabbit hole, talking about how so many of these laws that people are passing have to do with controlling women. And so we like to remind folks that in a reflective democracy where our elected officials look like all of us and women are well represented, these laws will not pass. And that's why Represent does the work they do. So welcome this morning. As I said a minute ago, we've taken a big look at the whole issues around women's health care, and healthcare is on the ballot completely. We talked about this at one of our previous sessions where we talked about the Black Maternal Health Caucus, and you can see top center is Rep. Latasha Mays, who is in her first term, but you'd never know it by the amount of work she's doing and by the number of people she knows, and we're happy to have her on again today. We just thought we'd start with a statistic. Do you know, people talk about folks coming in from Ohio and some surrounding states to have abortions in Pennsylvania because of laws in other states. But do you know 82% of counties have no access to abortion, the kind of abortion that Medicare would pay for, and public funding of abortion. It's in a state like Pennsylvania, this is just not acceptable, and it's not acceptable to anybody who's on this call. So today we have Senator Amanda Cappelletti, who's running for re-election. She was elected for the first time 4 years ago. And I heard her tell a story recently where she had worked as an aide to Donna Bullock, who's from Philadelphia. And she said, I might think about running for office. And Donna told her a couple organizations she should know about. One was Emerge and the other was Represent. And Donna was one of our first people that we endorsed who was elected 10 years ago. So we're very happy to have one of her proteges, Senator Amanda Cappelletti, on the call today. We also have Rep. Latasha Mays, and I mentioned a minute ago, Latasha is in her first term. She was the first woman to represent her district, and she's been working in reproductive justice for a long time, and it was time to get her someplace where she could not just advocate for it and run organizations around it, but that she could legislate around it. And then we have Rep. Danielle Otten, who we've been longtime supporters of hers. She first won in 2018, and we've been watching her rise up the chair. She won her race as an activist. She won her race because the pipeline was going through her backyard, and she couldn't find people who cared enough to make a difference. And so this has been one of her goals, but she's been very active in a lot of other issues for us. And just to give you an idea where our guests are from today, we have two from Southeast Pennsylvania and one from Allegheny County. We do try, and I can't name all the counties as Senator Casey can, but we do try and give you a wide variety of speakers on these events. As I said, we've got 3 strong women on the call today, and I've told them, it's your turn. Tell me what you want to talk about. Tell me what's going on in the legislature in terms of abortion access and women's health care, and go for it. Who's starting with us today?
You can start off if you want.
Please, Danielle.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Represent. You all have always been a huge support. As for me personally, Christine is the person who always sends the message of encouragement exactly when you need it. And also just from the day we started running, have been right there at our backs, always there to help. And uniquely from many other organizations that support Democratic candidates, Represent always comes in early and comes in strong. And that really sets a great foundation for every woman who steps forward to take their place on the ballot. Raising money and building a campaign is more difficult for women, just like most of everything else in our society is more difficult for women. So thank you to everyone who participates, and especially to Christine and the team at Represent for always being there to help women get a stronger foothold in the electoral process. This topic has been really heating up in not just Pennsylvania, but across the country, as all of you know. And I actually yesterday, a couple weeks ago, started reading a book. It's called Rage Becomes Her. If you haven't read it, it's like a must read for progressive women. And I've been listening to it over the months, but yesterday very specifically, I was on chapter 5 and I was getting my nails done, and I actually had to turn it off for a moment and just like sit with what I heard. And it talks about just how women are, we have been conditioned from early childhood to basically turn off our fight or flight instincts and freeze and fawn, right? And so that affects us in so many ways, whether that affects us in society, just in terms of the job market and in terms of education and all the places that we are all the time. It also affects how women are impacted by violence, because our fight or flight mechanisms and instincts have been turned off in us from early childhood. And it also it affects our ability to stand up for ourselves. And so it's all about the power of women's rage and reigniting that in women. And the one part that really sat with me when I was listening to this book yesterday was the part that talked about the frame of reproductive rights and the frame of reproductive justice and the difference between the two. And it talked about how for so long we've talked about women's health and abortion care and abortion access from a rights framework. But what good are rights if you don't have access? And that Latasha has been an evangelist for this issue of reproductive justice for many, many years. I have heard her speak both as when she was a legislator and before she was a legislator on this. But it really hit home for me because they talked about not just the access conversation, but also the conversation of how women are raised from a very young age, and how we are taught to separate menstruation from pregnancy, from and childbearing, and from menopause, and how that continuum of a woman's reproductive health care has been broken up, but it's been done intentionally. We've isolated pregnancy as a medical condition, and we have allowed society to criminalize that condition in the case when women, not just like women who choose abortions, but also we've started to criminalize the concept of the fact that women have miscarriages. We voted on bills in the Pennsylvania legislature that would require ritual burial for the fetal remains for someone who has had a miscarriage. It has gotten so outrageous. And it all starts with the separation of women's health in general, that as young women, we're taught to hide our menstruation, we're taught to feel shame around that. And then as we get older and reproductive, the mechanism of having a baby or childbearing is no longer our primary ability, the idea of menopause has become so taboo. I was just talking to a woman a few weeks ago who was talking about thinking she was pregnant, and she was in her mid-40s, and she was having the experiences of night sweats, nausea in the morning, all of those things, and she wasn't having positive pregnancy tests. And I said, honey, that's perimenopause. I hate to break it to you. That starts happening like in your early 40s. And so, we've taken those two aspects of a woman's reproductive health and just completely put that in the dark. And so something that I think is really important when it comes to reproductive justice is really changing the frame away from rights to justice and talking about the continuum of women's reproductive health, from menstruation all the way to menopause. And in Health Committee, we just recently passed a bill that would require the Department of Health to do public health education on menopause. The governor, I'm so excited. I think Amanda has the Senate bill on this, but we just passed the bill in Health Committee on menopause, and then the governor in his budget address has now put as a priority House Bill 799, which would require menstrual hygiene products in schools for free to girls. And that's not just, Dorisha Parker has another bill that would allow for SNAP benefits to be used to purchase menstrual hygiene products. But it's similar to the school lunch philosophy that, like, we don't want to isolate certain kids from having access. We want all kids to have access. There's no difference between menstrual hygiene products and toilet paper and hand soap. And they're all a requirement for hygiene for 51% of the population, and that should be accessible to everyone, regardless of your your economic status or anything like that. And so I was really excited because Governor Shapiro, in his address, he talked about menstrual hygiene, which I was sitting next to Regina Curry, and I said, "Girl, we just won." He said, "Period," in in the budget address. So, things are changing. It's been so exciting to watch the women's basketball NCAA tournament this week, just to see like so many opportunities for young women and girls that are opening up, because we're talking about being girls and just we're fighting for the opportunities and the access and the rights for women. And so just like this week as an in the moment thing, watching the women's basketball tournament like break records and exceed the men, that wouldn't be happening without the work that we're doing right here. My cousin Christine was, she played for St. Joe's. Her brothers played for Villanova. The boys were always the big superstars, and she was, just playing when women's basketball was just getting recognition. And look where we are today. So I'm going to wrap it up because I know that Latasha and Amanda want to talk too. But the other bills that we're working on, we're doing House Bill 799, which is menstrual hygiene products in schools. House Bill 802 is protecting nurses who provide abortion care. So not just protecting people who need abortion care, but also protecting the providers from other states coming into Pennsylvania and prosecuting our healthcare providers for providing healthcare to women in states that may not allow for that. House Bill 800 would also protect the information of patients so that other states couldn't come into Pennsylvania and subpoena information on patients who would come to Pennsylvania for abortion care. And we don't have a bill number yet, but Tara Khan is leading a bill that I'm a co-prime sponsor on. I believe Latasha is as well, on removing unnecessary barriers to safe abortion access. There are trap laws in Pennsylvania so we talk about how 82% of Pennsylvania's counties do not have abortion care facilities. The reason for that is that there are crazy, weird trap laws that like require the width of a hallway to be the same as a surgical unit, and elevators to be a certain width for abortion care, which actually can be done, inpatient in a regular doctor's office. And so they create unnecessary barriers. And then the big one, this is my baby, and it's really important to me, House Bill 1888, which is the Reproductive Rights Amendment. And that bill would enshrine in Pennsylvania's Constitution the right to choose or refuse contraception, the right to choose or refuse abortion care, and the right to choose or refuse fertility care, which, as you all know, with the recent court ruling, has really broken open the conversation on this. Yesterday, we had a very shocking email from a Republican colleague who is calling for a resolution to name my birthday, September 25th, as IVF Day. And so my response was, I'm so grateful to see IVF opening the conversation about women's reproductive justice. And I invite everyone to make a substantive action to join as a co-sponsor in House Bill 1888, which would enshrine constitutional rights to all people of Pennsylvania for access to contraception, abortion care, and fertility care, because we know that they all go together. So that's the work that I personally have been involved in, but I know Amanda and Latasha have been involved in so much more. This is such a big conversation, but I saw, Christine, I think you put the name of the book in, Women.
I did, and the author, right.
Yes. And this is such a big conversation, and we need to broaden it, and we are broadening it. And I was so excited to see Governor Shapiro really lifting up menstrual equity as part of this conversation in his budget. It was so exciting and unexpected. And we need to keep doing more of that and educating our men too, because it's exciting to see men joining the conversation as well.
That's great. It's just so exciting to hear these words being used, and I can imagine you're sitting there going, wait, did he just say period?
Oh,
in a budget address. I mean, it was really good.
I remember the first time I introduced my menstrual hygiene bill in 2019, we were having a rally at the Capitol, and that bill was actually inspired by a local teenager. And she came in and I was like, I can't believe I'm going to write a bill in the House of Representatives on this, but I'm going to do it, because if she can do it, I can do it. Right. And I went into caucus, and I had to invite my primarily male colleagues to the rally. And I was like squirming, and so was everybody else in the room. And a few months later, I was talking to Frank Dermody, our leader at the time. And I said, listen, Frank, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to say menstruation as many ways as I can, as many times as I can in caucus, just to make it really uncomfortable. So we've come a long way in a very short time. And
somebody just put in the chat that Rep. Otten's a badass. And you know that's one of the reasons I call you occasionally, is to remind you that we love our badasses. So Thank you. Okay, who's next? Senator Cappelletti or Rep. Mays?
I'll go.
Okay. Good to see you this morning, Latasha.
Good to see you all too. Good morning from rainy Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the 24th Legislative District. Just like my colleague Danielle said, thank you, Represent PA, for this space, for investing in women candidates early, like myself. We always tell the story when I got the call about the investment in my first race, that I pulled over and cried because I didn't know how I was going to continue. And so I hope that I'm giving you your return on your investment 10, 100 times over.
Absolutely.
So I want to always acknowledge, Represent, for your investment in me and all of us. And also the other supports, like for me, recently, I really grateful to have been nominated for the National Emily's List 2024 Gabrielle Giffords Rising Star Award. And so I reached out to different endorsing PACs and organizations who have supported me to see if they could help me get the votes I needed, and Represent did not hesitate to help me do that. I do want to share that I did not win the Rising Star Award, but I am happy to have been nominated, and I'll have the opportunity to attend the gala with Emily's List in May. So more on that the next time we talk. But I am proud to share that so much continues to come out of my journey in my first term. As Danielle mentioned, I am a long time advocate for reproductive justice locally in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and then a national movement that I'm lucky to have been a part of for over 20 years. And the movement has only been in existence for 30 years. So I've been a part of it for 2/3 of the time that it's existed in name, because Black women and women of color, Indigenous women and folks have always been leading reproductive justice work even before it had a name. And so the way I see my role as a state legislator is to bring that very lens to every single thing that I do as a member of the House of Representatives. As it's important. The firsts are important, but to me, I see that they carry great weight and great responsibility, and that we know that we have the responsibility to not be the last. So like so many of my women colleagues in the General Assembly, we're the first to represent our districts. There's a whole wave and whole generation of women taking over roles legislative roles that have been held by men, either the whole time that district has existed, or in a redistricting or in competitive races. And so for me, there's never been a woman going back to the district being created in 1968. So I carry that great weight when I come to Harrisburg, when I represent the east end of the city of Pittsburgh, and when I represent different constituency groups across the Commonwealth. And so I see our roles as legislators as expansive, that we are legislators. We're also budgetary advocates, especially for those of us who are in appropriations. We are culture makers. We're setting the tone for the policies that we create or block or allow to come to the floor. We're setting the culture, the politics, and very much, and the policy that we create or support or advance sets the culture in our communities and sets the culture in our Commonwealth. And so right now, the culture has changed dramatically. And we know that's because we are in the majority as Democrats. The culture has changed dramatically because we had over 30 new Democratic legislators come in this term to help us win the majority. And we had to defend it, as the speaker talks about, 6 times. And so this is a different feeling. Those of my colleagues who were in the minority, they talk about how horrible and nightmarish it was, and that we're lucky to be here at this time. And I do feel lucky. And so since I don't take those things for granted, I did not hesitate to get to work. And I didn't always know what bills or what issues I would take up. Of course, I'm going to always be an advocate for reproductive justice, but I thought I'll spread my wings. Maybe I'll, venture into some other issues that I care about, but haven't had a chance to actually dig deep into or advocate for. But as destiny would have it, I would have the opportunity to do what I know how to do. And that is to be a community organizer, even in my role as a legislator, bringing people together, making the connections, understanding the system of power that we're in order to create the change that we so desperately need as women and marginalized and vulnerable communities in our Commonwealth. And so, one of the first things I was roped into by Gina Curry is familiar territory. She said, we're going to organize an event at the Capitol for Black Maternal Health Week. I said, okay, I'll help out. So what started as helping out turned into the foundation for what would actually become the Black Maternal Health Caucus. And so that was an idea I had in 2019. Rep. Cephas was like, I don't know, we have the political culture for that at that time. So with my arrival into the House, with Rep. Curry's arrival into House, we joined Rep. Cephas in her continuing work for Black maternal health, which we had done together for years before I came to the House. And so how incredible is it for us to understand that we have to be looking at reproductive health and rights and freedom through a framework that is about justice. And if you do that, then that means that our legislation, our policy, our cultural work, our change-making work has to be intersectional. It means that we cannot isolate any one issue when we are doing legislation. And so what I'm learning about legislation is we're advancing policies or regulations or laws that are piece by piece. So my interest is, how do we win more and gain more by advancing intersectional legislation? For example, the speaker entrusted me to be the prime sponsor of the Crown Act. And so while people may think that the Crown Act is just about race-based hair discrimination and how we end discrimination of all kinds in the Commonwealth, it's also about education justice. It's also about workers' rights. It's also about environmental justice. And very quickly, where discrimination happens around our hair for Black people and Black women in particular is on the job. And so that combined with being, having to deal with inequitable pay, 60-something cents on the dollar for Black women, combined with sexual harassment in the workplace, combined with being consolidated and concentrated in low-wage industries, We don't need to be worried about how our hair looks when we go to work, or the opportunity for advancement when we go to work, or being denied the job, period, when we go to work. The education piece around this is that students don't have the opportunity across all genders to learn, because the focus is on the length of their hair, the style of their hair, the type of their hair. And we see that with a young Black man in Texas who has been out of school since August. And then environmental justice, because the way Black folks and Black women in particular, in order to make our hair acceptable, we have to use toxic chemical products to change our hair type and hair structure to meet a Eurocentric standard. So if we take that approach, then there are lots of stakeholders who can help us on the Crown Act. And so that's just an example of how a reproductive justice framework that is intersectional, that is looking at multiple issues and those who are affected, can be positive and can be effective in legislating. And so Black Maternal Health Caucus is another example of that. Since we launched in October, we've been able to support and advance 3 bills that have been signed into law, including the Dignity Act that Rep. Cephas and I have been working on for years, including the donor milk law, Owens law, that allows for moms and babies to get the milk that they need, whether they're in a NICU or whether a mom can't produce milk. As well as severe maternal mortality and morbidity. That's Senator Judy Schwank, who's co-chair of the Women's Health Caucus, and making sure that we are reporting on how sick moms are in our Commonwealth. And then just a couple weeks ago, Rep. Cephas, Rep. Curry, and I, we introduced a groundbreaking legislative package of bills called the Momnibus, the Pennsylvania Momnibus. And it ranges from everything from access to maternal health care to eliminating maternal health deserts. There are counties in this Commonwealth, just like there are counties that don't have abortion clinics, there are counties that do not have maternal health care. And if we can't make the connection between those two, then we are missing the point around reproductive justice. And lastly, this is about how we're addressing the social determinants of health, whether it's social supports, economic supports, environmental injustice and harm. Those things matter in terms of maternal health outcomes, and implicit bias matters as well. So those are the 3 hallmarks. Those are the 3 outcomes we're trying to achieve. And I'm proud to have introduced 2 of the 8 bills. One that will provide blood pressure monitors for all birthing folks and moms leaving the hospital, and also welcome baby kits. We need to make sure that parents have what they need on their first day of their child's life. And so I'm very proud to have introduced those bills. Lastly, on this point, I want to just say that please save the date for Black Maternal Health Week at the Capitol. It is April 15th, 16th, and 17th in the Capitol. We'll have a reception the first night, a full day, including our press conference in the Rotunda on the second day, April 16th. And we will have a brunch and learn that will be virtual and in person in Harrisburg on April 17th. Also, some of our bills will be running on April 17th in the Health Committee. Rep. Otten, just, like we are really trying to move these bills quickly. And I think that the beauty of the caucus is that we have everyone from corporations to our colleagues in the House to our Black maternal health and health advocates on the ground paying attention to Black maternal health. Lastly, I'll say I support all the work that has been done around reproductive rights. And again, I think a shift to the reproductive justice frame in our legislating is going to win us it's going to win for Pennsylvanian women and abortion seekers in the long run, if we're actually looking at the roots of why we don't have abortion access. And that's the case that was ruled on by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, will pave the way for us to have Medicaid coverage of abortion. Again, work I had done in my previous job at New Voices. We submitted the first reproductive justice brief around how Medicaid coverage that doesn't include abortion access discriminates against Black women and girls in this Commonwealth. And so to see that work come into fruition is amazing. I too am supporting the bill that Rep. Kine and Rep. Otten and I have introduced around removing barriers to abortion access, removing trap laws. We were there in 2011 when they were first initiated. Also, I've introduced bills around how do we make sure we have enough nursing and nursing education If we don't address the structural piece, we'll continue to have the shortages around all facets of women's health, whether it's reproductive health or maternal health. We don't have enough doulas to aid women and birthing folks as well. And so I'll stop there and just say that we have come a long way. We've accomplished a lot, but nothing gets done unless the Senate is standing with us, whether it's my Crown Act, whether it's the Pennsylvania Omnibus, or whether it's our bills on reproductive rights. And I hope that's a great segue to my colleague, Senator Cappelletti. Thank you all.
That's an amazing segue. Thank you. Because as you were talking about all these issues, I just kept thinking, what's going to happen when they hit the Senate? So Senator Cappelletti, you know,
oh gosh,
you're not shrinking away on this one, are you? You know, you're fighting the cause.
no, I'm not personally
And for
shrinking
everybody
away.
who doesn't know, the numbers in the Senate right now are 28 Republicans, 22 Democrats. The Republicans control what gets brought up at committee, what gets discussed, and what gets voted on. The last I heard, there was over 200 bills passed by the House that the Senate has not acted on. So, Senator Cappelletti, what are you doing with your time?
It feels like a lot of nothing. So I want to start with, yes, Danielle, and you guys can call me Amanda. You all know me at this point very well. You know, Latasha knows me. She and I are kind of in that new mom status, sharing back and forth what it's like to be a working mom in this space. So I'm really grateful for her when we were both advocates on the outside, and the work that we're both now able to do under the dome, hopefully, you know, to get some good stuff moving. So yes, Danielle, I share with Senator Maria Collette, somebody else that Represent has backed in her reelection and in her first election, and she's a dear friend and a colleague on, it's the Menstrual Equity Act, and it is right now Senate Bill 906, and it would require public agencies serving our young people with lower incomes, people that are homeless or have housing insecurities, or are incarcerated, to provide menstrual hygiene products at no cost to people that are being served in those spaces. We already know with Rep. Morgan Cephas, as you guys have heard her name plenty today, I'll give her another shout out with the Dignity for Incarcerated Women Act, that piece is already set to cover menstrual products there. So hopefully we can find a way to kind of close that loop with the governor's budget address. I can tell you, Maria and I were jumping for joy, and I know Danielle mentioned her, and Gina, like, think not just the governor, but like a male governor, a man is up there saying period and menstrual, and like it was just a really cool moment. I mean, we still have so far to go, but to see that shift and be a part of seeing that shift was really cool to be there.
Well,
And then I want to
Amanda, one of my favorite stories of yours is when you talked in a hearing once about having had a miscarriage, and that one of your Senate colleagues said that the way I remember the story is he said, well, my wife had a miscarriage. I didn't know I could say that out loud here, or something along those lines.
So I will tell you, for me, I think most of you probably know this. I was the first person to give birth while serving in the state Senate. We've never had anybody ever become to give birth while serving in an elected capacity in the Senate side. I want to make that clear. We have had several on the House. They are dear friends. I have met the people who came before us and the women who came before us as well. So in that, I actually have two stories where it's not that they said that they didn't realize that they couldn't say it before. It's that nobody had ever talked about it before. I introduced legislation or a bill to recognize October as Pregnancy and Infancy Loss Awareness Month. And that was 2 weeks, I think, after my second miscarriage. And so I stood on the floor and shared what had happened to me and read remarks and cried through it. And in doing that, I had a lot of my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, coming up to me to share their personal stories. A lot of men who talked about the impact it had on their wives. But that wasn't a conversation that was happening in the Senate, because no offense to men, it hits them differently than it does, or it can hit the carrying person differently, because there's a physical trauma and an emotional trauma that goes with your body expelling the fetus and everything else that comes with it. And I don't know, please, I know that I have some doctor friends on here. I don't know if that is the correct term. I don't know all of the correct terms through the development from the time from conception through, but we'll say fetus for now, sorry. But it's been really powerful to hear and talk to individuals that like have had that experience, and they just never talked about it. I did have another colleague, I think Danielle mentioned the abhorrent bill that would have required me to have a burial service for what came out of me. And I hate to say it in such kind of crass terms, but that wasn't it. It was for me, and for each person it is different. This is not to denigrate. It is being pregnant, starting a family. It is all a very personal experience. So for me, I was mourning the lost opportunity of becoming a parent. I didn't have a child yet. That was not what happened. My grandmother buried 2 children. I did not bury a child. There was no child for it. It was a lost opportunity and a physical trauma of what that is. That bill, the maker of that bill, when it came before the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, kept insisting, this will help you heal from your trauma. And I ended up yelling at him in committee, to the point where several other committees in other rooms stopped because they could hear me absolutely at him for how abhorrent he was being, and telling me how I could grieve or manage my own trauma of going through that. Requiring me to bury what happened wouldn't have helped me. It would not have helped me make any sense of what I had just gone through. And for me, I use what it is that I went through, and I've been able to turn it into, I now have a beautiful little girl that I adore more than anything, and I use it as a platform to let other people trying to start families know that they are not alone, that it is difficult, it is not always easy, regardless of how it is portrayed in the media and in entertainment, and that there is somebody on the Senate floor thinking of them, that's been through it, thinking of them when developing policies, and that understands because they've been there. So I'm really trying to use what I've been through, both in attempting to start a family and since starting a family, because I had issues with the really great insurance we give ourselves as elected officials. I didn't have lactation consultant coverage for the people I wanted to use. And I am at a point of privilege. I could pay for it out of pocket. That was not a big deal in my family. But I broke down and cried at the idea that it was difficult for me to even come to the conclusion that I didn't have the coverage. And how must this feel for somebody who doesn't have my educational background, doesn't have the privilege that I have, or the support that I have in my husband and my family and my colleagues and everybody else. And it just, like, it broke me, because I was also probably 2 weeks postpartum at that point. So, it breaks me now to talk about it, but it definitely broke me in a very different way in that moment. So those are things that I've experienced as being a new parent here, and having worked for Planned Parenthood. I kind of want to tie this back to this current election, Chris, if you don't mind.
Please do.
You are
Please do,
hearing,
because because part of the way Latasha led into you is to talk about all of the bills that are sitting in the Senate, and why isn't anything getting done, Amanda?
it's not getting done because we have a Republican majority, and they have never had to negotiate with Democrats in this way before, and honestly are throwing temper tantrums. And what I want you to know is you can help us flip the Senate. With everything that you are doing right now, we have 3 seats. You heard Chris say it's 22, 28. We have 3 seats that we target, which gets us to 25, 25, functionally a majority. And that puts us in a much better position. It doesn't always give us the win, but it puts us in a much better position than we're at right now, where we could possibly pass the Crown Act, where we could possibly bring up, I'm just gonna go with the momnibus, because like that means something so much to me, like the idea that we could, better support doulas and midwives and the things that birthing people are telling us they need to address the maternal morbidity and mortality crisis here in Pennsylvania. Like that, those are things we could functionally get done. But what I want you to also know is I've been doing a lot of speaking for the Biden campaign on the mifepristone case that just came through the Supreme Court as well. Because mifepristone is one of 2 medications that's used for a medication abortion. It is also used to help manage miscarriages. It was prescribed to me.
Right.
So this isn't just about abortion. Like this is about control. If it were just about one thing or another, you would see much more targeted, but it's not. This is about controlling women, people with uteruses, birthing individuals. It is about control. So what's the big deal here? If the Supreme Court rules in favor of the plaintiffs in that case, mifepristone is banned throughout the United States, functionally making abortion gone. Like not even illegal, just gone, and not a tangible reality for so many people, because people in rural communities get more, don't have access to an actual provider more often than not. You heard Latasha, I think it was you saying how like there's no access in the rural communities, and what does that look like? Not only don't they have OBGYNs, they don't have OBGYNs that are willing to provide abortions, and they don't have abortion providers. They also don't have doctors that are willing to provide mifepristone to help them manage their miscarriage. And that's not just happening in rural communities. I've heard from people in the Reading community, and I think Latasha, you remember hearing about that when Planned Parenthood came, that in Reading, Pennsylvania, in Berks County, the big city in Berks County, that's not happening there. Like they're not prescribing it. That's a problem. So that we just take that away from everybody if that's how this case goes. And if we don't re-elect Joe Biden, we are going to have a national abortion ban. So all of this work is for nothing. The intersectional work, the work directed specifically to abortion care, towards maternal morbidity, all of those things that we're trying to do gets wiped out. So how does that come back to the Senate? When we're the ones knocking on doors, me, Latasha, Danielle, when we're the ones knocking on doors, we get people out to vote. We get them. So when you invest in us, it's a bottom-up approach of getting people out to vote. We get them out for us. We get them out for the seats we're trying to flip in Dauphin County with Patty Kim, in Allegheny County with Nicole Rosito, in Erie County once that primary is decided. Those are the seats we're looking at. When you make those investments in organizations like Represent and candidates that can make a difference like that, we get those votes out, we flip those seats, and we give Biden and Bob Casey the margins for a win that is absolutely undeniable. So that's what you're doing right here when you're supporting your local candidates. You're giving the top of the ticket the margins while flipping the state house and the state senate. We did the state house. Let's expand the state house and let's flip that state senate.
So Senator Cappelletti, Amanda mentioned 3 seats.
Yes.
One of them is 25, which is in Harrisburg.
Yep.
And we have a fabulous candidate that Represent has supported there. We supported her in her House races, and that's Rep. Patty Kim. Patty Kim is running in that. That is one of the few seats that really changed a lot in redistricting to make it more Democratic. The incumbent Republican dropped out. We're supporting Patty Kim. We gave her our first amount of money in December. We gave her some more money than last week. Second race we're supporting is 37, I think it is, in Allegheny County. We've got a number of people on the call from Allegheny County. We're supporting Nicole Rosito in that race. We sent her a check this week. She was thrilled. So we've got to win that seat. That one's going to be tighter. It's one that was kind of very close between Biden and Trump in the last election. I think Shapiro won that seat. It's a really important seat. Guess what it's going to take? It's going to take money. And in the third seat, there's 49 up in Erie. There's a primary going on. We're going to wait and see what happens in that primary. But there's a strong woman, an interesting woman that we've decided to support up there, Selena King. She's running against somebody who's, people say has a slightly better chance in the primary. We're looking forward to, we'd love to send Selena King to the Senate with you, but we need these 3 seats to flip because they're the ones we have the strongest chance of winning. And we understand that the biggest change that'll happen if we get an equal number of Dems and Republicans in the Senate is committee chairs. And the committee chairs are the people who control what discussions happen and which bills get brought up. Which committee are you going to chair, Amanda?
That's a great question. Right now, I'm the minority chair of state government, and as much as I love Health and Human Services, I would love to chair that, but that's currently held by a friend and colleague, Art
Senator
Haywood,
Friel.
that he really enjoys
Art
it. So
Haywood.
I think I'm going to try and keep state government for right now, because that is where all of the election laws go through, and I want to fight to ensure each and every one of us can vote. We're not taking away those rights. We make it easier and a smoother transition, and we help our counties facilitate that process, because right now we have a law that does not that they're asking for some changes to. So
And
hopefully
I
we can get
hope
that done.
as long as Senator Haywood, as long as you get him practicing saying menstruation, abortion, period products, he's a very dignified person. He needs to practice saying these things, because if he's the chairman, he's going to hear them a lot.
Absolutely, we'll work with them.
So what questions do people have for anybody want to raise their hand or submit a question? Yeah, we'll put those candidates' name in the chat. I also put in the chat that over half of we did a look at people who attend our breakfast briefings. Just about half of the people who attend do not give us money. I love doing these breakfast briefings. Look at the energy you get out of it on a rainy Wednesday day. Isn't this, our three speakers today were the right way to start the day? We need money. We need money to support the candidates. So what other any questions people have? We will put names out there. We'll remind you of how to get a hold of us. Any questions for our speakers? Okay, we'll continue on, but I've got a few closing slides, but I am just overwhelmed by the work that the three of you are doing. I'm overwhelmed by the energy you have for this. And I want everybody on this call to remember, this is not just energy on their part so that they can say, I did good work. This is energy that they're putting out there, the time, the efforts that they're putting out there are for all of us. Imagine how different this was going to be. We were talking about mifepristone before. My daughter lives outside the country. She recently had an ectopic pregnancy that required her to use mifepristone. I'm very invested in this one personally. I mean, these are really important issues. All of our daughters, our friends, our sisters, people, these are things people need. And this is what we're doing. And Danielle, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I'm on the, I'm a little bit further down the road on this at this point, but I wasn't when I first ran for office. But you and I had a conversation the other day about the number one barrier for women running for office is parenthood. So many women are discouraged from running because they think that because they have younger children or because they want to have children or they want to wait until their children are older. And I just want to lift up these two amazing colleagues of mine who are both new moms doing this work. And it is not easy, but it's possible. And you talk about reflective democracy so much. The voices of women and mothers in the legislature is so incredibly important. And Chris Sappy is actually who said this to me years ago, that
she's a
women
state rep
and
from
mothers
Westchester.
from Chester County.
Chester
And
County.
women and mothers are the number one consumers or users of everything we do in government, whether you're taking care of your seniors, you're taking care of kids, you're dealing with children with disabilities. Women and mothers are the number one people that interface with our government, and we need to be at the table having these conversations. And I just really want to lift up these two ladies because Latasha and I talk about it often. The session days when she's driving all the way out from Pittsburgh, which is the hardest thing for a woman in politics who has young children to do, driving that 4-hour drive. My sister has been asked to run for office many times. She's a mom of a disabled child. She would be an amazing legislator. She says all the time, there's no way I could do that 4-hour drive. It's just a lot. And so there are so many women who are doing it. And these two are two shining examples of new moms that are rocking it, doing a great job. And I just want to say, I want to point that out because I think it's amazing and we need more of it. And I was there too when I first ran for office. My kids were 2 and 4 and it was crazy. And dogs barking at squirrels was the least of my worries when I had little ones running around behind me. So, you know, it's exciting to see so many women doing this work.
And that's why we talk about a reflective democracy. It's, you know, without having mothers represented in the legislature, these conversations just do not happen. So thank you to the 3 of you. I hope you're all energized. I thank you to a couple people who put in there that they're now donating to represent. And let's go on to our final slides. I'm enthusiastic. Do you think, what's our edge? Our edge is we talk to people about what changes they want to see in Harrisburg. We provide these sessions as our form of civic education. I saw Deb Siamaka on the call. I know she's working on civic education. She taught in high school. But a lot of people don't realize these are what goes on in Harrisburg. You see on the news all the time what happens in DC. This is the real work of what's changing people's lives in Pennsylvania, and these are the people doing it. How do we do our work? We raise money, and then we evaluate and we curate candidates who meet your values. We have people send us there. We have a long application that people have to go through. We have people who read the applications and say, I like this one, I'm not, I think she's kind of on choice. And we look statewide to see who can bring about change. And we look to see who needs our financial support. So you can write checks to everybody you see who is running, who's a Democrat. You can do all of those things. I always tell folks, I live in Philadelphia. I'm always going to be represented by a Democrat, but she doesn't need my money. My money is needed in counties across Pennsylvania to make a difference. So our last breakfast briefing was about 6 weeks ago. And what have we have been busy since then. We've invested an additional $166,000 in candidates across Pennsylvania. We're now up to close to $250,000 this cycle between reelect money and early money that we gave out in December and the money we did now. We have some candidates who we invested, who we think have a great chance. We gave them $20,000. We really believe in the work we're doing. We've held events in Philadelphia, and I know Nancy Bernstein is on the call. We held an event in Pittsburgh that raised us $40,000. And now we're setting up the next. Oh, and by the way, that 4-hour drive to Pittsburgh, Pat West and I did the 8 hours to Pittsburgh. 5 hours, whatever it was. It was a long way. We're setting up our next events. Do you want to be included? What subjects do you want? Can you help us move outside the large metropolitan areas to find more people who might want to make change in Pennsylvania? These are the women we've invested in so far. Look how many of them there are, and look how diverse they are. They're all different ages. They're all different, and we have straight and lesbian. We have bisexual, we have mothers, we have single adults, we have people with varying education degrees, we have teachers, we have nurses, we have all kinds of, we have lawyers, we have all kinds of experience on here, and the wide variety of these women are what give us a reflective democracy. And these are some pictures of some of the events that we've held. So we've been very proud of the work we've done across the state. Wouldn't you like to be in one of these pictures next time? As I said, we've invested almost $250,000. We're going hard at it. We invested $700 total last time. I don't know that we're going to get there, but we're going to try really hard. We are making investments in women like the ones you just saw because they are changing Pennsylvania with our help. And I don't have to drive to Harrisburg all the time. Email us, call us. We're looking for volunteers. We're looking for support for these events. We're looking for fundraising thoughts and ideas. But it's really important. And we look forward to talking with more of you and being on these events. and just about 9:30. So thank you very much. We'll get back to you. You'll all, everybody who attended or signed up for this, will get a follow-up, you'll get a link so that you can see this on our YouTube channel. Show this to your friends. Go talk to people when you get off this call and they say, God, you're all awake so early in the morning. You can tell them what a great event you just attended. The video will be out soon, and help them to understand how important this work is. So thank you. And thank you to our special guests. I love all of you.